But we would probably ask, where does the love start to major? Because, in the Persian view of the God, well, it's influenced much by the Scythian Central Steppe people, which is, oh, goodness, males are pretty frightening individuals. Especially from the Western point of view, if they're your enemy. The horseback archer, he's the terror of Eurasia for hundreds of years. Just roams and villages and might is right sort of approach, Well, I think that could be decidedly the Greek influence. You see, if you come down to nearer the Christian story, come down to supposedly Socrates, but perhaps more reliably Plato. We got lots of words supposedly written by him, and probably so too, mostly, at least. We have a philosophy here which is, well, the gods still exist, but Plato's got in mind very much now the pure forms. He's in the thought world. He's the foundation of Gnosticism in that sense, you would think, but Gnosticism has always been, I think, basic to religion. Its rituals and symbols and so on are hinting at some other truth in a greater sphere of being and so on, as far back as we can see, religion and developing. But you only have to really get into the Republic and he's dealing about what he thinks is the ideal society. I mean, hopelessly wrong, I think, from the modern point of view, but what his real contribution is his logical discourse approach to things. And that does get us somewhere, and it's, I think, much further on than Plato's Republic view of the state should be a dictatorship by the great philosophers, namely Plato. Oh, and his mythical, I think, mentor, Socrates, who was possibly in reality, if he existed at all, not such a socially desirable character, but still. Yes. But we've carried the mythos, different type of mythos now, right through, which is that in some sense your academics are the elite that you should defer to. The expert says, the professionals, the ones that know, and of course they don't know. They just spent a lot of time on the subject and, well, you could say tried to get it more right than someone else, but they get trapped in a tradition and a religious type culture that gets so set in its ways that, history, the historistic view of history becomes set, and you need mavericks from outside to come in and say, but what about so-and-so? And without those mavericks, it's as if all these disciplines ossify, turn to stone, and bring anything but life. And we found that even with the communist view of things, that why does a Chinese firm have the odd American employee? Well, he's not necessarily American, but he's that sort of astonishing individual who actually suggests new ideas that aren't necessarily in keeping with the leader. And I mean, he might disappear in the night as a consequence, but sometimes not. That's very useful and a bit more reliable advice-wise than the parrot yes men that you put around you as the leader. And suddenly, you know, the next leader comes out of the blue. He's one of these terrorists that's now seen as theologically, politically acceptably speaking, and it's all changed. And the previous leader may even be vilified in order to establish the new one, or may be built on, and continue to praise as some great in history, but we start to make his policy a bit murky so that the new leader can take the country the way he wants to. And certainly the Constantine view of the god, whether it was Mithraic or I don't think it was ever Hebrew really, but anyway, Christian we'll say, was not, of course, the loving father, but much more the Persian dominant father. Bad news for Christianity. Bad news for the West, as we call it. Which includes now places that are anything West. They're very far east, like Australia and New Zealand. Because of the great success of this formula that, well, we call Christianity, but we probably owe greatly to Constantine. Would you believe it? Oh dear, how awful. But I still say thank you, Heavenly Father. Because, well, it shows us the way, doesn't it? You compare what is with what you think is pure form, right, good. And you sort of think, well, that's what I value. That's what I worship at heart. What do you come up with as an individual in that case? Well, you love those that have loved you. Mum and Dad in their way, ideally, I suppose. And all the rest of the family. You come to put love high on the agenda. And obedience is more of a cost to you than a benefit. And you know the difference between, in my case, being obedient to Dad because I'm frightened of him, and loving Mum, doing what she wants, of course, because I believe she loves me. Shows you the way to go, doesn't it? Marshall's God's going to be a God of love, not a God of law. Is that a viable God to have? Well, taste and see. He's been doing it for a while and thinks it's great. He could be the exception. And of course you look at what you think might be the exception, which are not. They're people not following Jesus at all. They're following some other God, whatever its religious name is. And you might throw out the baby with the bathwater, which is what the secular do. And in a sense, quite reasonably, they say, but that which is called of the story, Christian, doesn't necessarily do well. I don't think I want to go down that road. Looks a bit legalistic and so on, and very restrictive. I want my freedom. But of course, my freedom may not be very loving if I'm a inexperienced kiddie, and in treating other people not so well, I may find life's not so good for me either. So you come to value love and being loving and those that love. So I'm saying that my view, aren't I, of course, of the Jesus story is inevitable. That God is our heavenly dad who loves us, and us in our selfish way at that, just as we love kids. They're very narrowly self-interested to begin with, but we trust that they'll be wonderful and work towards that. Sometimes dictatorially, and that doesn't seem to work. Sometimes lovingly, and sometimes that doesn't seem to work either. So we're a bit confused at times. But we know what we value. And we value, in some sense, this pure form of a loving God, not a military dictator God. And, well, at least individually, that can be our God. And as I say, providing it's not deliberately clashing with the state may be quite tolerant, providing you worship the emperor as well, of course. You know, provided you keep that which is culturally acceptable, which in the West at the minute is some sort of rehash of ethics and values called political correctness. And provided you defer to that where the state requires it, well, the state doesn't see you as an enemy. That's all right. You don't have to be crucified. I think that is really where the Christian story went completely off the rails. It's very simplistic view of the crucifixion. Horrific view, I might point out, because it was an horrific punishment, of course. It was to vilify rebels and destroy their life to posterity, obliterate them from the record, throw the body to the dogs after it's dead, not put in a rich man's tomb. It's not the Roman way. If he was put in a rich man's tomb, it's probably a major miracle compared to what normally happened. But that is not the point of religion. Religion points the way to go, not to give you a objective account of history. There's no such thing anyway, and religion is certainly not it. And provided you realise that that's not its value is whether it brings what you value. That's its value to you, any religion. Does it bring what you value? And of course, the state religion might not. So we value religious freedom, and that includes the right to be secular. And the state basically says, well, yeah, it's fine, provided you keep the culture, more or less. I don't see that's a problem. It's like the Nuremberg trials. You know, if you can prove that it was not of your own volition that you did this, but it was your orders from a dictator who would wipe you out if you don't obey, you can hardly be held responsible. The whole concept of blame has wrecked Christianity. And Mum doesn't blame her kids. She forgives and rescues. Because Mum has a future in mind for those kids. And she's rescuing you into that future. Love you. And this becomes our values if we survive. Or we may survive with rather more worldly values. Or perhaps Mum was pretty worldly in her way too. Just happened to love you though. How lovely. Bless you. And you are blessed. For except you receive the kingdom of heaven as a little child, you cannot enter therein. And we do. We're receiving it as children, always, no matter how old you are, 78 or anything else. We're still children compared to our Heavenly Dad. And I mean by that we are not blamed. Of course you believe the things you believe so far, but that's not the plan I have for you. And nothing can stop God achieving his plan. He loves you and he's all powerful. Why would you want to believe anything else? It's a disaster from the start if you do. That's my view. Thank you, Heavenly Dad.